Quick, pay attention. There are monsters and creatures and entities that are vying for recognition, and it would be rude to ignore them. Better yet, I've found 5 that are especially excellent, and if you want to be in the know, stick around. It's not every day that we upload a video giving you the top 5 of a spooky topic. Wait, yes it is. We're so consistent. Wow. Well, let's get to it. The top 5 horror movie monsters that deserve your attention, part 2. Coming in at number 5, we've got the vines from the ruins. You might be thinking to yourself, how are the rope-like plants that Tarzan swings from scary? There's an answer inherent in that question. If Tarzan is mad at you, you better watch out for vines. Add in low to the ground vegetation known for strangling and snaring, and you've got a pretty dangerous plant. However, the vines we're talking about today are much worse than anything mentioned above. These vines are sentient, manipulative, and just plain evil. Making an appearance in the 2008 horror movie The Ruins, these green grabbers are a nightmare and a half. Based on the book of the same title by Scott Smith, The Ruins tells the tale of a group of pals exploring a Mayan ruin. Ruins and horror just seem to go hand in hand, don't they? This time, it's not a curse or a war that drove folks out of their place of worship, though. It's plants. At first, the tourists don't realize what's going on. They were searching for their pal's lost brother and were suddenly accosted by a group of Mayan villagers. Thinking dealing with these locals would be their horror story, the groups run to the ruins, which are filled with vines. Touching the vines turns out to be a death sentence, though, as anyone who comes into contact with them is either killed or exiled to the ruins. Why are these considered so dangerous, though? Well, like I mentioned before, they're sentient and want to eat you. They can crawl inside your body in the most disturbing ways possible and like to tear people's flesh right off their bones. Now, if they were simply looking to eat folks, that would be one thing, but these vines toy with people. They can mimic noises like a ringing cell phone to lure people into dangerous situations. Noises aren't all they can replicate, as they've also been known to pretend to be people. Plus, they can essentially take over people, crawling around inside of them, playing them like a puppet. It's more than an invasion, it's a total takeover. Folks can claim that triffids and giant Venus flytraps named Audrey are the best of the best when it comes to horror movie plants, but I'll say these vines take the cake. Coming in at number 4, we've got Alyda Winthrop from the Unnamable. Lovecraftian horror is all about the stuff that the senses can't quite quantify. A less known but very classic tale by H.P. himself, The Unnamable features 2 pals discussing whether the creature that haunts a nearby house can be described. They land on no, leaving it unnameable. Soon after, they encounter just such a creature, and in attempting to explain what they saw, they again land on Unnamable. It's short, sweet, and does what people expect of cosmic horror. To put something like that in a movie would be quite the challenge indeed. So instead of following the original tale to a T, Jean-Paul Ouellette decided to take inspiration and run with it. Instead of being an indescribable entity of gelatin, slime, and vapor of 1,000 shapes of horror beyond all memory, the Unnamable was instead made to be the demon daughter of a local warlock recluse. The 2 pals discussing the nature of such things are still around, but now there are some more co-eds to make this a classic haunted house romp. The story leaves a little to be desired, opting to hit all of the expected marks instead of going truly cosmic, but the monster is excellent. Alyda Winthrop, heiress to the Winthrop fortune, does not care for money and power, she just wants to kill. Anyone who enters her home will become her prey. Either that or they'll fall under the influence of the Necronomicon. Although it does take a while for her to reveal her true form, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. She stalks the hallways of an enormous manor and manages to kill a couple people near the beginning in extremely gruesome ways. A classic 80s monster with plenty of wicked prosthetics, this is one that obviously had a lot of thought put behind it. Although its form is very definite and probably a little more humanoid monstery than most other Lovecraftian creatures, there's a lot to love here. Cloven hooves, bat wings, and a shriek that will haunt your dreams. There's nothing quite like a demon to get your brain going. Apparently, it took the actor who played this monster 9 hours to get into costume. It wasn't just a rubber suit she could hop right into. Now that is dedication to the craft. For some classic 80s straight-to-video horror, you gotta check this out. Hell, it even got a sequel. I wonder what kept the Unnamable from getting bigger. Coming in at number 3, we've got Hypers from VFW. Don't do drugs, kids, especially if the drugs are known to be extremely addictive and have a track record of turning people into horrific, violent mutants. Seems like a pretty clear-cut choice, but apparently a lot of folks didn't heed this advice in this strange alternate reality world. There's a drug called Hype going around, and it's got a lot of folks hooked. So hooked, in fact, that the users have essentially pledged maniacal loyalty to the local dealer and would do anything to get their next fix. This includes invading a Veterans of Foreign Wars dive bar hangout spot and fighting tooth and nail to kidnap and kill a girl who stole some. Things get violent quick, like From Dusk Till Dawn violent, but with drug-addled lunatics instead of vampires, or Green Room violent, but with junkies instead of fascists. I guess there's junkies in Green Room too. Does that sound like a good time to you? Well, good, because this movie exists and is jam-packed with a bunch of brutal, brain-splattering moments. And while the hypers aren't as visually monstrous as some of the other entries on this list, their actions while in a drug-fueled berserker rage definitely rank up with some of the best. Coming in at number 2, we've got The Freak from Castle Freak, and not the new one, the Stuart Gordon original, of course. Say what you will about the remake, The Freak's motivation is so much more believable in the OG, and there's no nasty blindfolded fornication with a festering freak. Some people might like that, I suppose, but the impact isn't quite as lasting. So, back to the 90s. Here we have Stuart Gordon, Jeffrey Combs, and Barbara Crampton working together at their iconic peak. It might not top the list compared to their other Lovecraftian outings, but it is a classic nonetheless. The Freak is equal parts freaky and sympathetic. Of course, he's a murderous mutant with a violent streak, but he's also an eternal child who is locked away in a for the majority of his life. These two factors play against each other throughout the movie as the Freak becomes a monstrous counterpart to Jeffrey Combs' tragic father figure, John Riley. The Freak just wants to be accepted, to be loved, but he finds out that he's hideous and that people are afraid of him and that he's more likely to get what he wants through violence and trickery. Even though the Freak ends up doing horrible things, it's never for no reason. Understanding why a monster does what it does, but still knowing you'll never reason with it is a deadly combo. It's not often that a monster is this heinous without being labeled pure evil or beyond human comprehension, and for that reason, the Freak ranks high. Long live the Freak. And finally at number 1, PG from Psycho Goreman. This lines up pretty well with current events as this blood-soaked monster-filled flick just recently made its way onto Shudder. It released earlier in the year and enjoyed a fair deal of attention from those who streamed it on demand and maybe bought a Blu-ray or two. Now it's easy access, and boy is it fun. A sibling duo discovers a space gem that grants them control of a hyper-powerful extraterrestrial entity, and then they have to fight off waves and waves of alien threats who want this thing dead. It's just as wacky as you're imagining, I promise. The Archduke of Nightmares, or as he is named on Earth by a little girl, Psycho Goreman, or PG, is an imposing purple and black monstrosity covered in glowing red veins with the face of a bulldog and the ears of a dark elf. All in all, it's a pretty sweet combination. He starts out all-powerful and terrifying, but soon falls under the control of Mimi, a young girl with a commanding attitude. His killer instinct is subdued by the gemstone in her possession, and soon he's hanging out with the family like a good pal. Well, mostly. However, his presence does bring an intergalactic crew of killers to Earth who he has to fight. And really, any of these creatures could top the list. Imaginative B-movie monstrosities, all put together with practical effects, this is a wicked moment for those who love cheese and schlock. If you didn't know about this one already, now you do. You're welcome. So, how's your head? Chock full of monsters? It hurts. Good. The more the merrier, that's what I always say. So, what'd you think of the list? Do you agree with my picks? What horror movie monsters go woefully underappreciated? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more vivacious ones from the top 5 scary demons that are real part 2. KC Mueller 87 says, when I heard the name Mara, I instantly thought of the Elder Scrolls franchise, goddess of love and compassion. Now I'll never see getting married in Skyrim in the Temple of Mara the same again. That's not a great name association now, is it? Maybe you can get married somewhere less horrifying in the next Elder Scrolls game, if it ever releases. The Horned King says, I like the D&D art that showed up for Asmodeus. Speaking of, D&D is full of horror if you look for it. Oh, absolutely, for sure. I still haven't played a full horror-themed campaign though, so maybe someday. Dead Inside says, Nasu sounded alright. If nothing ever decayed, what would we do with all the bodies? I'll stack them real high, I guess. Boohoo 2U666 says, what's with the Tash? 70s adult performer comes to mind. That's my backup career. I just need to find a time machine. And First Master Mavis says, why do you look like that, Keegan? To kind of see the previous comment. That's all the time we have for today. I'm going to ride a roller coaster without keeping all limbs inside at all times. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Well, Green Grabbers R.A. and A. Making an appearance in the 2008, what is happening, man? There's a drug called hype going around, and it's got a lot of folks whooshed. Oh my god, I just like swallowed I don't know what I swallowed. However, his presence does lure an intergalactic